somebody was asking me today, they're like, hey, how do you feel if baseball played with no fans?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I played for the 1998 Florida Marlins, so I mean, been there. And I remember pitching a first game of a doubleheader against the Expos. It was Marlins Expos, 4:00 start.
Classic.
And
man.
yeah, oh yeah, the ratings were through the basement floor, and 104 people. That's how many people they counted.
No.
And I had runner in scoring position, and I came set. And sorry, I hadn't come set. I was looking in for the sign, and somebody above our dugout yelled, "Throw the change up!" And when there's thousands of people, you don't hear that. But when there's 104, you're like, it's a pretty good idea. I'm going to go with it. So I threw the change up. I got him out as I'm going off the field. I didn't know who it was. I just looked above our dugout and I just said, whoever said that, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I just kind of looked around.
That was one of the most popular promotions at Pro Player Stadium. They take fan appreciation night to the next level. You call the game. Growing up in Canada, did you get Expos games, Blue Jays? Were those nationally televised? Who did you root for growing up?
Yeah, I rooted for the Blue Jays and I rooted for the Mariners because we got Cairo. So we would get Rick Riz and Dave Niehaus calling games all the time. But every Saturday morning, I would get up and watch the French channel to watch Expo games on Saturday mornings. We get them all the time. So I'd watch games in French. And then you'd get Dave Van Horn. He'd be calling games too. Sometimes you get them with him calling games and that great voice. But all those guys, man. I think I can name the whole entire 1987 Expos team. I loved the uniform and they had the players. It was great.
During your playing days, let's say, you're on those Marlins teams or those Cubs teams, you're not in the postseason. Would you watch the postseason, watch the World Series?
Yeah, absolutely. I went to postseason games, went to World Series games. I love baseball. I just always have. Was going to minor league games at Vancouver Canadian games when I was a kid, and then
Nice.
sitting behind the bullpen and talking to the pitchers and what do you guys do to be a professional ball player? And they were great and give me advice. And I'm in on it. I don't ever get bored talking the game.
Right, man. I mean, on this show, I usually talk to comedians, and I was talking to Todd Barry the other week, and we were having this conversation about how he called into David Letterman's show in 1982 as an 18-year-old. And then 10 years later, he's on Late Show with David Letterman doing stand-up. And I was saying, it's the equivalent of a baseball player growing up practicing on the mound, pretending you're in the World Series, and then you get to the big leagues one day. I mean, it's just a totally surreal thing to actually have your prophecy fulfilled in a way.
Dude, I sat behind the bullpen at a Vancouver Canadians game when they were the White Sox. They're AAA for the White Sox. And don't call me Donnie Paul, because to the two ends.
Yeah.
And Wayne Edwards, a left-handed reliever, they were both in the bullpen, and they let me talk their ear off for 4 or 5 innings. And then finally, okay, we got to get ready to pitch. And I asked them everything. And then in 1998, Don Paul was my teammate with the Florida Marlins.
Wow.
That's crazy. Here's a guy, he was giving me, you got to run a lot of poles. You got to make sure you stay out of trouble, get good grades, all this stuff, throw a lot of long time. They were just giving me all this advice, and I just was a sponge taking it all in. And then he becomes my teammate. Bizarre world. You're right, man. Living the dream. It was incredible.
Did he remember that exchange in Vancouver with you?
Yes, he did. I brought it up. He's like, me and Wayne talked about that for a week afterwards, because you wore us out. And it wasn't the normal conversation. I was asking a tutor advice. It was pretty cool.
Isolate Night with Scott Rogowski, live every Sunday through Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern.